What's up guys, this is Trebus with Next Level SC2, and in this video we're going to be talking about micro. Micro is a very broad topic that it's essentially half of Starcraft 2. If Starcraft 2 is micro and macro, the micro is the controlling the units on the battle, the macro is building all those units. So micro is a big part of Starcraft 2 and RTS in general, and there's a lot more to be talked about than I can talk about in this one video. So I'm going to be covering the fundamentals in this video. So if you feel like you have a good understanding of the units and kind of how they're interacting and the micro that high-level players are using, then you can go ahead and skip this video if you want. But if not, stick around and you may certainly learn something. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is you just need to know your units. Okay, that's the basics of where a lot of these micro techniques are going to be born out of. And the more you know the units, the more obvious the opportunities for micro will be seen. So the first thing you should look at, take whatever race you're playing, go into a map. This map is called Unit Tester Online, or you can go into any kind of map like this, a unit tester, and look at all your units. So looking at the notable things that you want to note, I'm looking at my Marauder here. You want to look at the range of their attack. This Marauder has a range of 6. You want to look at the damage and the damage type. So for instance, Marauders do 10 damage or they do 20 damage versus armored. This additional damage versus armored is going to inform a lot of decisions about unit counters and kind of stuff like that. If you see it's better versus armored, or if you see it does more damage versus armored, then obviously it's better versus armored and not as good versus light or unarmored units. So look at range, look at damage. You can look at armor. It's not as important. And then the next important thing is to look at the unit and see whether it is armored or not. So I'm looking here. Marauders are indeed armored. And so where the learning comes here is I'll look at my Marauder and I'll say, he has a range of 6. Then I look at a Roach and I say, oh, he has a range of 4. Well, that 2 difference in range is the opportunity for micro. And the first advantage I want to talk about is, looking at my notes, the range advantage. Actually, I'm not going to go into that yet. Let's talk about types of micro. So obviously you're just moving around your units. The most prevalent type of micro you'll see, especially from Terran players, is the scoot and shoot micro. Okay, and it looks approximately like this. I go in, I attack, I run away, I attack, I attack, I attack, and I'm running away and just attacking when I can. And could even be not trying to deny attacks, but just kind of running around, stop, attack, and you do this by several ways. You can either hit S for stop, you can just right click to run away and then attack move towards your target, or you can hit hold position. Hold position is good for like Banshees. If you're trying to micro a Banshee around and you don't want it, like a Banshee will automatically target a missile turret, and if you don't want it to go up and attack the missile turret, then hold position is the thing to use. So that's scoot and shoot micro, something everyone should be familiar with. Another big part of StarCraft 2 is the splitting. Okay, splitting is especially important, I would say, in probably the Terran vs Zerg matchup, just because of banelings. So notice how all the units clump up in StarCraft 2. They make this big clump, and if you just mash your clumps together, and something like that is going to happen, and the banelings are going to take out a lot of your Marines. So a big part of StarCraft 2 will be actually just manually splitting up your units so they're not as close together, and that way you can avoid things like splash damage. Obviously you're not going to spend this much time splitting, but I'm just showing you the principle of it. And then when the banelings come in to attack, they're going to hit one Marine at a time, and they're going to do not nearly so much damage that time. So splitting is a big aspect of StarCraft 2. You'll do it whenever you're facing banelings, or just kind of in general. It's better to have a split army. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later. The next thing, big considerations. These are big, broad considerations that are applicable for more than just the units I'm looking at here. Okay, let's do 10 roaches and 10 hydras. And on this side, we'll do the exact same army. So 10 roaches, 10 hydras. The reason you want to know the ranges of everything are to tell you how to split up your units. So without knowing the ranges, just if you know the ranges, then you already know this answer. But if you don't, then yeah, it might not be quite so obvious. Knowing the ranges, come on, you stupid roaches. Knowing the ranges will help you know whether to have certain units up front or certain units in the back. And there's more reasons to have roaches in the front and hydras in the back than just the range. But looking at the range, you see hydralisks have a range of 5, roaches have a range of 4. So I'm going to do this battle and you're going to see what happens. What's going to happen is these roaches are not going to be able to get in range. They're going to run around like crazy because they can't actually get anything done. These roaches are going to be up front firing. The hydras are going to line up in the back firing. And hopefully this will be a quite one-sided battle. Look at all these roaches just running around. They can't do anything. Most of the hydras have been attacking for most of this battle. And also the other thing is with hydras up front, they just die so fast that it's not advantageous to have it that way. So the arrangement of your units is very important before you even go into a battle. So those are the main considerations that I think are just basics, most important things you should be worried about. Okay, so those were the types of micro. Now let's look at certain advantages that you can get either through your units or through upgrades or through positioning and stuff like that. So let's do what I was doing at the start. A marauder versus a roach. So you already saw it before, but I'll show you one more time. Range of 6 versus range of 4. That means, well, let's just put this roach on hold position. That means I can shoot him before he can shoot me. He's just sitting there. Obviously he's going to chase me, but I do have a longer range than him, so I can actually get shots off when he can't. Okay? So that is a range advantage, and those are all you'll understand. It's obvious for certain units, for siege tanks and Colossus. It's completely obvious how much the range advantage matters. Other units, it's not quite so obvious, but even this difference of 1 or 2 range can create a big opportunity for good micro. The other advantage, or rather another advantage, would be a speed advantage. And the speed advantage can be attained through a lot of different ways. Maybe the unit is just faster than the unit it's fighting. Just basic, it's faster. It can catch it when it wants and it can run away when it wants. That's a huge advantage in micros, to be able to get away. That speed advantage can be gained a lot of different ways. It can be gained through just the unit. It could be gained through tech of some kind. It could be gained through being on creep or not being on creep. So one advantage of this speed advantage would be the Marauder's concussive shell. Concussive shell slows down units, and this isn't even going to make my Marauder any faster. It's just going to make the other unit slower. So what I could do before was do this scoot and shoot micro, and I'd still take a couple hits. But now I don't actually have to take any hits because I can slow the roach down. I have a range advantage. And I can just kill this roach without him doing any damage to me whatsoever. So what you saw there was a range advantage and a speed advantage, and that just makes for a big victory, on top of the fact that the Marauder does a lot of damage versus armored, which roaches are armored. Other instances of a speed advantage could be, it could be Lings with Ling speed, Banelings with Baneling speed, on and off creep versus stimmed Marines. Zealots with charge. Once they get charged, that's a speed advantage that they can get. They can get into the battle faster. I already said stim with Marines. There's lots and lots of advantages here. Speed and range are two of the biggest factors in where these opportunities can come from micro. The last thing I want to talk about, this is far from the the end of discussions of micro. This really truly is just the beginning, but a very, very important concept, kind of similar to splitting, is using concaves. So I'll explain what I mean with a little demonstration. We'll do 20 Marines versus 20 Marines. Okay? And let's see here. Okay. When these units fight, if I just throw 2 clumps against each other, then they're going to sit and they're going to shoot at each other. And they're going to kill each other roughly equally. The way these battles work usually is as soon as one side gets some kind of advantage, they have a couple more units, it snowballs, and so you're left with 5 units versus 0 units. A concave takes advantage of the unit AI, and it takes advantage of the ability of all these units to start fighting immediately. So when we had the 2 just clumps of units fighting each other, it took a little while for them to spread out. They had to spread out on their own to get this concave. This is called concave, and they, both sets of units spread out roughly equally, and so the battle was roughly equal. Well, in this case, I've set up the red Marines to have this incredible concave advantage, and you can imagine this. You can imagine this happening if there's, say, there's a little hallway right here, or maybe even going up a ramp, where these units, they can't actually spread out at all because they're in the middle of some hallway. And they walk up this hallway or they walk up the ramp, and they're greeted by Marines in this kind of formation. Every single one of these Marines is going to be able to start firing immediately. Meanwhile, a bunch of these are either going to be stuck in the middle of the pack or they're back of the pack, and they're going to be wandering around and not able to actually go attack. So we'll show what this looks like real quick. Look at this, all these red Marines firing immediately, and whoops. And you can see turns into a massive, massive advantage. 14 red Marines alive versus 0 blue Marines. So concaves are extremely important, and it matters with all types of units. It's not just Marines, it's basically every kind of unit. The more directions you can be attacking from, the more of a circle you can build around the your opponent's army, the more units you'll have firing, the better surface area you'll have, and the more damage you will do. So concaves are extremely, extremely important. Okay, so that will wrap it up for the absolute basics of micro. Obviously, there's a lot. There could be a lot to talk about. We could talk about every single unit in the game and micro techniques for that unit, but a lot of it you should be able to figure out just by looking at the units. Once you know these stats, you kind of have these things in your mind, you can watch some other pros play, and you'll understand a little better what they're doing. So my advice is, learn your units, know what type of damage they do, their range, and whether they're light, biological, mechanical, all those things are very important. Alright, stick around, keep watching more Next Level SC2, and good luck!